In this week's web video fishing forecast for New England, we got some reports on much improved ice options, both as far as success as well as range in which you're going to find safe fishable ice. Got talk of some holdover striped bass action, a nice steelhead update from up in Pulaski, New York, details on this week's Circle Hook webinar, and much, much more. Check it out.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
Hey there, Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine with this week's web video fishing forecast. Well, gonna start off saying here, Mother Nature seems to have kept those cod boats tied to the dock since before last week's video. So I don't have any updates on that. Nobody's been out, so I can't pass along any new info for you, unfortunately. We had a little bit of dusting of snow here locally where I lived overnight. We've had some pretty strong winds and nasty colds, so just not conducive to doing the old cod fishing. But it doesn't mean you got nothing to do here in New England. We got plenty of opportunities. For instance, ice fishing action has improved and expanded. Fisherman field editor John Hanasek tried to get me to get out this past weekend, but unfortunately I was stuck in front of the computer editing up the reports because the February issue of the Fisherman magazine is out this week, which I'm going to get to that shortly. But nonetheless, he tried to get me out to fish, wasn't able to. He hit up the northwest corner of Connecticut after he was done with his reports for the weekend. Said he got into a pretty good bite on the crappies. Now, primarily they were small fish throughout the day, but he set a string of tip-ups and he was jigging, and by day's end was able to piece together pretty decent catch and had a solid fish fry, to show for his efforts on the day. Now continuing along with the ice action, talked to James and Clayton once again. They said they took a ride north up to Lake Winnipesaukee over the weekend, and they found plenty of ice and tons of fishable hard water up there. Some places were so thick, they said they even saw trucks out on the ice. Now that's not something I'd really be ready to do with my vehicle, but hey, a little different ice fishing up there nonetheless. They said it was super cold. I mean, when they were out in the open, as you see here, it was just screaming winds and freezing cold. So they didn't spend too much time outside of the shelter, but fortunately these guys know what they're doing. So they had an ice shelter, stayed tucked away inside for a good portion of the day, and did pretty well jigging in there. Got a bunch of perch, and James even nabbed a solid lake trout. Real cool catch right there. Something I still got to knock off of my list, whether ice fishing or open water. That's on there still. But on the way back, James said they hit up a couple of spots, checked the ice a little bit closer to home, North Shore, Massachusetts area, and it was spotty. There was no consistency to it. Ice is still iffy along the shoreline. It's a good time to remind you that if you do head out ice fishing this weekend, anytime this week, we're still in the first early ice pattern along much of the coastal region. So be sure to take extra precautions, have all your safety gear, and check the thickness with a spud as you move around. But ice fishing is not the only thing going on right now. Heard from Evan over at Blackhall Outfitters in Westbrook once again this week. He said he continues to work on those holdover striped bass. He's hitting the large titles, hitting the smaller titles, hitting it from shore, hitting it day, hitting it at night, even hitting it by his kayak, of course, wearing a dry suit as well as PFD and all the other necessary items. But he's been doing well finding fish. Now, February is traditionally coming up here the hardest to fulfill if you're trying to get one of those striper a month, if you're trying to catch a striper every month throughout the year. December pretty easy. January's can be a little bit tricky, but February has always been the toughest month to get it. But it still can be done. You just got to pick your days and your nights. I haven't found so much that a quick snowstorm helps things like we have here, but if you get some rain, a decent rain event, if you can get out right after that, you got about a day, day and a half, maybe 2 days if it's a lot of rain, a window where the fish seem to turn on. My guess is that it's a slightly warm shot of water into those rivers, so a lot of times we'll get the fish moving. Your standard jigs are going to be your best bet right now. Soft plastics on a jig head, but if you're not finding success with the regular 3 to 4, maybe 5-inch class that everybody's throwing, don't be afraid to drop really small down to, a 2-inch offering, or even bump it up a 7, 8-inch. You just never know. It's always worth a shot, and who knows, it just might save the outing. If you want to get some fishing in, you're willing to take a little bit of a ride, winter steelheading in upstate New York is an option right now. And Connecticut angler Cam Clegg, who keeps his boat in the summer over at Boats Inc. in Niantic, took a little bit of a drive this past weekend. Went all the way up to Pulaski, New York. The weather was cold and snowy, but he managed to land a hefty steelhead for his efforts. Now, in this week's reports in the magazine as well, got it from the Douglas and Salmon Run, DSR, they report mixed conditions. When the weather was poor, windy, etc., it was really tough, as to be expected. But when they had some consistent wind, weather, what have you, in the last week, and even with that snow event this weekend, success was much better. A couple of guys, you know, average guys were getting maybe 1 or 2 fish, but they even had some reports of anglers getting double-digit fish on an outing. So again, upstate New York, good opportunity right now. And like I said, you can check out the complete report from the DSR in the print magazine, which is due out this week. That's right, the February issue of the Fisherman magazine went to print this Sunday, and it can be found online right now at thefisherman.com for subscribers, and of course on your local newsstand and in your mailbox later this week. Now, in this month's issue, we had a bunch of great winter topics, as would be expected. We got, let's see, rod repair, emergency rod repair article I put together. We got an article on traveling to Florida if you want to get away from this cold weather. We got a couple articles in there, one on improving your fish photos this year. We also got a couple of special articles for you this month. First up, we got the details on the final tagged striped bass, satellite tag striped bass from the 2020 Northeast Striped Bass Tag Study, as well as a rundown from each of the 3 editors here at the Fisherman on what you can expect with different tactics for circle hooks in 2021 and going forward for striped bass, which is a perfect lead-in. The last thing I got to tell you this week, the next installment in the Fisherman Magazine's Master Angler Seminar Series takes place Thursday, the day this video is coming out, Thursday night, January 28th at 6 p.m. Now, the subject this week is going to cover all things circle hook and how they relate to striped bass. Of course, this is free, open to the public. It's going to be a live webinar hosted at thefisherman.com. Of course, again, live webinar, excuse me, so feel free to ask any of your pertinent questions on circle hooks and striped bass, how we got here, what we've got going forward. And if you're unfortunately not able to tune in to the video live, or the webinar, excuse me, live, we're of course going to archive the video right here on YouTube as well as at thefisherman.com. So hopefully I will see you there as well. One last thing before I leave this week, just got to remind you to like the video, drop some comments down below if you've got any questions, subscribe to the Fisherman Magazine YouTube channel, and be sure to tap that old bell to get immediate notification when we post new content. So until next week, if you plan to head out and fish this weekend, be sure to start off your trip by visiting thefisherman.com.
Steigercraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious anglers choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit steigercraft.com for a dealer near you.